I want to start with a simple observation that in the last 20 years, you'd have seen that there are so many options for doing graduate education and postgraduate education in India. So many IITs have come up, so many NITs have come up, so many private universities have come up, some very good institutions have come up, IIMs have come up, private MBA colleges have come up. So the options and the infrastructure has multiplied, which means that most of people studying in India probably will study in India. But is that the truth? That is not the truth, because every year, if you see, India as a country exports the maximum number of students going for their bachelor's and master's to countries like the US, countries like UK, countries like Australia. So the question actually is, and many parents think about this, many graduates and postgraduates think about this, where should I do my graduation or post-graduation? Is India the place? Or is a broader market like US, UK, Australia the place? Now, many videos actually look at it only from one lens, whether it's the cost lens or the visa lens. What I want to do in this video is to give you this 360-degree picture so that you have an understanding of everything. One is, of course, the cost. Second is how difficult is it to get it. Third is in terms of the income you can make, the visa status, what are the pros and cons of blending in that society. Number four is the intangible growth that you will get, whether it's to your mindset, whether it's the benefit of networking. And number five, I will tell you, when should you do your graduation or post-graduation in India, and when should you do your graduation and post-graduation outside India. So before we start the video, why don't you subscribe to my channel and send this video to someone who's thinking over the same question and wants to get an answer. So the first question people typically ask about is the cost of education. And let's do a fair value comparison of the cost of education. So if you're looking at doing a graduation or a post-graduation degree in India, you can do it either from a public college, a government college, think of an IIT, IIM, NIT, or you can do it from a private college, think of Manipal, BITS Pilani, VIT, etc., etc. So let's compare the fees. Now let's talk about a graduate degree. So if you are studying for 4 years in a public college, in IIT, NIT, typically the fees are between 1 lakh to 4 lakh per year. And if you're looking at a private college, think of an Ashoka University, think of BITS Pilani, typically you're looking at a fees of between 8 lakhs to 20 lakhs per year. So if you cumulate this over a period of 4 years, the cost of a graduate degree education in India is between 12 lakhs to 24 lakhs. And the living cost, honestly, is very little. The hostel costs are very little. The food costs are very little. Now, if you put this number into perspective, 12 lakhs to 24 lakhs is quite reasonable for most Indian families. And even if it is not, you easily get access to loans and EMIs. And this is a burden most students can actually carry. Now, let's compare the cost to other countries. We'll look at USA, we'll look at UK, Canada, Australia, and Germany. So let's start looking at USA. If you're looking at the average tuition per year in a market like US, it's between 25 lakhs to 50 lakhs per year. Now, if you look at the living costs, think of rent, think of food, think of utilities, all the other cost of living expenses, it's between 15 to 20 lakhs per year. US is not cheap to live in. So if I look at a cost of 4 years, it's about 1 crore on average, varies between 75 lakhs to 1.5 crores. So typically in a market like US, any decent education is a cost of 1 crore. Let's compare it with other markets we're looking at. So the next one we'll compare it's with UK. So if we look at UK, the average tuition is between 20 to 40 lakhs per year. The living cost is slightly lower than the US if you're looking at a college education, so between 12 to 18 lakhs per year. So the total cost again is close to 1 crore, between 60 lakhs to 1.2 crores. But what happens with UK is typically a lot of degrees are 3 years. You may save a little bit of money, but overall it comes to that 1 crore number that you're looking at. Let's look at Canada, and Canada turns out to be a little cheaper. So if I look at the tuition fees, it's about 15 to 30 lakhs per year in terms of the tuition fees. The living expenses are marginally cheaper, which is about 10 to 15 lakhs per year. So the total cost is between 50 lakhs to 1 crore in terms of Canada. Now, historically, Canada has also had easier work permits, easier PR, but that is changing as we look at in a subsequent section in this video. Let's look at Australia. Let's look at some of these numbers visas for Australia. So the tuition is between 18 to 35 lakhs per year. The living expense is in line with US and UK at about 12 to 16 lakhs per year. So the total cost is around that 60 lakhs to 1 crore per year. But there are good opportunities as we'll explore in some time. Let's look at Germany. Germany is a very interesting example, and a lot of Indian students are now going there. So the tuition in all government universities is largely free or very little, 20,000 to 50,000 per year. The living cost in Germany also is not that much, typically between 4 to 6 lakhs per year. But the total cost over a period of 4 years is very, very economical, around 20 to 30 lakhs per year. But Germany is an outlier, to be honest. But if you also have to survive in Germany, you need to know the local language. So without knowing German, it's going to be very, very difficult. So if I summarize this section for you in terms of cost, if you want to study in India, largely the graduate level, the cost is between 12 lakhs to 24 lakhs. The living cost is not too much. If you want to study outside India, typically the cost in US, UK, Australia, Canada is between 50 lakhs to crore and a half, minimum a crore for most decent colleges. The thing you may be asking is, an abroad degree is 1 crore. Is it worth it or not? Hold on to that. We will come to it. The second question in this video that we will look at is, what is the entry barrier and what is the competition we are talking about? The job comes much later. You'll have to get into these colleges in the first place. So is it tougher to study in India or is it tougher to study abroad? Let's just compare this. So let's look at India, and I'm going to read out certain numbers for you. Let's look at IIT JEE. Now, I did not clear IIT JEE, so this is a sore point for me. So every year in IIT JEE, around 10 lakh people apply, 10 lakh students apply for IIT JEE, and the total seats in IIT JEE is about 16,000. 16,000, that's a conversion rate of 1.5%. Now, 1.5%, which means if 100 students are writing IIT JEE, 98 to 99 don't make it. It's not that they are bad, but it's just that the system does not have enough seats for them. Let's look at IIM. I come from IIM Bangalore, so I have a better view of this. So if you look at CAT, typically 2.5 lakh people write CAT. In IIMs, the total number of acceptances is around 5,000. 5,000 from 2.5 lakhs. So its acceptance rate is about 2 to 3%. Again, if 100 people are writing it, 97 to 98 don't get a place. Are they bad? No, they are not bad. The system doesn't have enough options. Now, very interestingly, let's compare this with the Ivy League. Think of MIT, think of Stanford, think of Harvard, etc. Colleges of that pedigree. Now, if you look at those colleges, their batch sizes are also bigger. The acceptance rates are also higher. The acceptance rates are typically in the 10 to 15% range. And the number of good colleges in markets like US, UK, Australia are much higher than just the IITs in India. So if you have a decent GMAT score, a decent SAT score, good letters of recommendations, you can easily look at universities like University of Toronto, University of Austin, Texas. You can look at King's College in London, University of Melbourne. And these are globally ranked universities, not in tier 1 globally, but overall very, very good places. So the summary of this section, which I'm trying to tell you, is if you're looking for quality education in India, you need to be in the top 1%. The limited seats, there is brutal competition. If you do not make it, it's not that you are bad, it's just that there are not enough options. But internationally, the number of good universities are much more, and the acceptance rate is also much higher. So it's much easier to get into a good university outside, of course, provided you have the right kind of access. So if you look at competition, if you look at access, it is easier to get into a good university outside. It's very, very important to understand this point. Let's go to the proof of the pudding. Now, what have I told you till now? It takes 1 crore to study outside, but what does it mean from a salary perspective, from a visa perspective, and a ROI perspective? Now, let's start with a salary perspective. So if you study in India at the graduate level, what are the salaries you can expect post-graduation? Typically, the range is between 3 to 10 lakhs for a decent engineer, not from an IIT, but from a tier 2, tier 3 college. If you come from an IIT, the salary range becomes 15 to 25 lakhs. If you come from an IIM, the starting salary goes close to 30 lakhs. But again, remember, this is the top 1%. For all practical purposes, the remaining 99% gets a salary between 3 to 10 lakhs per annum. Now let's compare these salaries to the average salaries in other markets like US, UK, Australia. So I'm going to read out some latest statistics that I have. So if you look at a market like US, the average starting salary is between 60 to $90,000 to 50 to 80 lakh rupees if I'm actually converting. And if you're looking at some of the more lucrative sectors, the STEM sectors as they call, technology, engineering, you can easily go into 80,000 to $120,000. That's about say 70 lakhs to 1.1 crores. Now remember, you cannot convert it like that because the cost is also 1 crore. Let's look at Canada. Canada, the average starting salary is about 45 to $65,000. This is about 40 to 60 lakh rupees broadly. Now, Canada, the cost of living is also slightly lesser and the salaries are also slightly lesser than the US. If I look at Germany, remember Germany, the cost of education was very, very low. So Germany, if I look at, the average salary is between 40,000 to 55,000 euros. That's about 40 to 55 lakh roughly. And there are many sectors in Germany which Germany is very famous for. Think of automotive, think of manufacturing, think of engineering, and jobs are largely stable, but you need to know German or else it's very, very difficult to survive. So what does this teach you? This teaches you that if you're looking at average salaries versus India, average salaries are typically in the range of 5 to 10 times more than what you will earn in India. But that's a flawed comparison because the cost is also 1 crore versus the cost which is 25 lakhs in India for cost of education. But that's not the only catch. The real thing you have to think of these days is about the visa. The visa is becoming the real issue. One is to get an admit. Second is, will they let you go into that country? So let's look at some of the visa norms. Why is the visa important? Can you work in that country? You have to recover money in that currency. So let's start with US. So you need an H-1B visa typically to work in the US. And you would have seen in the news that H-1B is getting very, very difficult. So every year, about 85,000 H-1Bs are given and roughly 5 lakh people apply. So the acceptance rate is already very low, which is 20%, which means 4 out of 5 people do not get the H-1B visa. And you would have seen in the news now it's getting tougher. So as someone planning to go into the US, you have to factor this in very, very carefully. Now, there's also something called optional practice training, which means 1 to 3 years you can work there, but there's no guarantee you can stay after that. So the US is very, very difficult from a visa perspective or from the point of working after you finished a graduate education. Let's look at Canada. Now, Canada is one of those markets where hordes of Indians used to go because the visa policy was fairly liberal. I know so many people who got a PR. It was one of the easiest markets to do it. But of late, I think after in a year ago, the policies have started to get tightened. Now it's getting difficult. Even PR is not very easy. The work visas are also not very easy. There is a sort of anti-immigrant wave that's starting in Canada also. Let's look at UK. Now, the thing with UK is, post-study, you have a 2-year work visa that is available. But after that, you have to get a skilled worker visa, which your employer has to fund for you, which is very difficult. And also in the UK now, there is an anti-immigrant wave that is going on. Germany and rest of Europe is very interesting. Now, there is a shortage of quality workers in areas like engineering, healthcare in these markets. So it's easier. But the one thing you have to know is, without knowing the local language like German, it's very, very difficult. The one thing nobody factors in is the weather. The weather is brutal 3-4 months a year. If you're looking at markets like US, UK, Germany, Canada, you have to factor that. And if you're someone who cannot handle cold, and it's a very practical point of view, you should really consider going in there. So all this I have told you for this section in terms of salaries and visa. What do I summarize it as? Number one, the way you should think about is the salary you get is 4 to 10 times higher, but also remember the cost is 4 to 10 times higher. Number two, there are serious issues with visa, at least for the next 2-3 years in all these markets except Germany, because there is an anti-immigrant wave. It is very difficult in the US, very difficult in UK, getting difficult in Canada and even in Australia. So this is something you have to be careful. The worst thing you want is you're spending 1 crore for a degree and then you have to come back to India and work for a 7 lakh job. You will never make the ROI. So that is how you have to to think about it. Let's move to the next section. Now, there are some things that cannot be captured on an Excel sheet. So we can capture cost on an Excel sheet. We can capture the salary you can get on an Excel sheet, but some things cannot be captured. And this is something which is intangible. Think of exposure, think of network effects. What is the real ROI? Now, let me give you an example. So there is a value to a global network. If you're studying in a classroom in the US, you will have people from every country sitting in that room. So you will have, your neighbor will be a Chinese student who will actually teach you about hard work. You will have a German student who will teach you about precision, who will teach you about discipline, about punctuality, about manufacturing. You will have someone from Saudi Arabia who will teach you about culture, who will teach you about human relationships. You will have someone from America who will teach you about innovation, about risk-taking ability. You will have someone from Africa who will teach you that with limited resources, how do you do a lot. Now, this learning is incredible in the classroom. Also, how does it help you in real life? Because once you start your business, you will have contacts in every country. You can just call up a friend and say, tell me what is happening. There are some countries which are ahead of where you are, and you can say, call a friend in China saying, I'm starting this tech startup. You did this in China. How does this work? So that contact, one is learning through your peers, one is lifelong global network, and that exposure is absolutely phenomenal. The second thing you have to look at is what is called character development. If you're staying alone outside India, it is not easy. You have to manage your rent, you have to manage your food, you have to manage your laundry, you have to manage 4 months of cold weather at the age of 18, 19, 20, 22. It's not easy. You also have to manage loneliness. It is very, very difficult staying away from family at that age. Now, this leads to true character development. You may have to do a waiter's job, you may have to do some teaching assistant job, you may have to make your ends meet. And this leads to true character development. You have to manage your budgets, you have to manage your costs, if you fall sick, you have to manage all that. In that weather where you're away from home is never easy, and that is something you have to look at in terms of that. So I've been speaking for a long time and you may be confused. So let me summarize this for you. What does this mean? When should you study in India? And when should you go outside to study in the global markets? This is how you think about it. So when do you study in India? Number one, if you are in the top 1%, you can crack a top business school, IIM, IIT, NIT, NLS, BITS Pilani. If you are in the top 1%, India is a very good place. You will have a great life, you will have great salaries, you will have great career growth. Number one. Number two, if you're someone who wants to build a career in India, say you want to stay close to family, you believe in the India story, you don't want to go abroad, you don't want the uncertainty of visa, then India is the place that you should absolutely look at. Sometimes you may not have the financial means. It's very difficult to take 1 crore out and you don't know if you'll get a job or not. The worst thing that can happen is you pay 1 crore and then you come back to India and you have to do a 7 lakh job. You'll never recover that money. So if your financial means are not the best, then India makes a lot of option. If you have a family business you want to join at some time, you want to do UPSC, all of this, India makes a lot of sense. When should you study abroad? Number one is you want that global exposure. You want to be a part of those global networks. You want to have that global mindset. You want to live outside. You want to experience different cultures. Then outside makes a lot of sense. Number two, you really want to work on cutting edge tech, the latest in AI, the latest in drones, the latest in everything. Think of medical tech, everything. You have to go to the US because nothing comes closer in terms of the work. You are someone who can handle that loneliness, you can handle that emotional pressure. If you're someone who manages, you want to be independent, you want to be strong, then studying outside makes a lot of sense. Of course, you need to have the finances, whether it's through your parents or you can manage to take a loan. If you have that, you should definitely go outside and work that. So what is the conclusion? The one thing I want to say at the end is, it's not about India or US or UK or Australia, Canada. The question you have to ask yourself is, which market will you grow the most? See, a degree is just an opener. I come from IIM Bangalore and I can tell you what the degree does is it opens a door for you. What you do after that in terms of skills, in terms of discipline, in terms of upskilling is up to you. And that often is the real differentiator that you can look at. You can do very well in India, you can do very well in US, you can very well in UK. But what you do with that opening is what actually matters. So this is a summary of should you study in India or should you study in in the international market. So I gave you a holistic picture across multiple dimensions, no emotions, fact-based. So if you know someone who's struggling with this question, please share this video with them. Please subscribe to this channel. I keep creating content around questions that matter to a lot of you. I hope you've liked the video. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I will also engage with them. Until next time, thank you so much.